The arrogant millionaire talks to a nurse and ends up meeting the love of his life. The Golden Palace restaurant sparkled under the golden lights of Venetian chandeliers on that June evening. Sarah adjusted her impeccable uniform before starting her shift, observing the growing movement in the main hall. At 35, she carried on her face the determination of someone who knew life's difficulties well, but maintained in her brown eyes a spark of hope that even the difficult years couldn't extinguish. The establishment was one of the most prestigious in New York City, frequented by the city's business elite. Sarah passed between the tables with the elegance acquired in 15 years of profession, skillfully balancing the tray with glasses of imported red wine. She was accustomed to the refined environment, although her reality was quite different. A small apartment in the suburbs, where she raised her 8-year-old daughter, Emily, alone. The night was proceeding normally until a commotion at the entrance caught her attention. It was him. Robert Taylor, CEO of the country's largest business group, had just arrived with his associates. Sarah felt her heart race, not because of the famous businessman's presence, but because that face, even 15 years older, was still capable of awakening memories she struggled to keep buried. "Keep calm," she repeated to herself, continuing her work with the same efficiency as always. But fate had other plans. As she passed near Robert's table, another customer abruptly stood up, causing her to lose her balance. The wine glasses toppled, spilling their contents onto the businessman's impeccable Armani shirt. "This is unacceptable." Robert's deep and furious voice echoed through the hall, silencing the conversations around. "How could you spill wine on my shirt?" Sarah felt her blood run cold. Years of experience in the industry, and she had never experienced such great humiliation. But she needed to maintain her composure. Her daughter depended on this job. "I'm sorry, sir, it was an accident. Someone bumped into me as I was passing," she responded, controlling the tremor in her voice. One of Robert's partners tried to ease the situation. "Robert, take it easy. It was just an accident." "It doesn't matter. Is this restaurant hiring just anyone now? Look at the damage." Sarah observed that arrogant man, so different from the young man she had fallen in love with years ago. Robert didn't recognize her. Time and physical changes had erased any trace of the girl he had promised to love forever. She swallowed hard, remembering the last time she had seen him, in the hospital, making promises he never kept. "I'll call the manager," she said, maintaining her dignity. Behind the scenes, while waiting for the manager, Sarah struggled to hold back her tears. It wasn't just the shame of public humiliation, but the pain of seeing how that sweet and dreamy boy had transformed into a cold and arrogant man. Memories of the past mixed with the cruel reality of the present. She, who had dreamed of having her own restaurant, now juggled 3 jobs to ensure a decent life for Emily. The manager arrived quickly, offering discounts and taking responsibility for cleaning the shirt. Robert, however, remained unyielding. Sarah observed from a distance, thinking about how life had carved such different paths for them. While he built an empire, she rebuilt her life day by day, brick by brick. The night ended with Sarah keeping her job, thanks to the manager's intervention. But the encounter had shaken structures she thought were solidly built. When she arrived home, she found her mother sleeping on the couch and Emily in her room, peaceful in her child's sleep. She caressed her daughter's hair, thinking about how her life had changed since she discovered her pregnancy, alone after Robert disappeared without a trace. The next morning, Robert woke up with a strange feeling. The previous night haunted him like a persistent ghost. As he prepared for another day of meetings, the image of the waitress wouldn't leave his mind. There was something familiar about her, something that deeply bothered him. In his office on the top floor of one of the most important buildings on Wall Street, he tried to concentrate on the financial reports, but his mind constantly wandered to the restaurant incident. His assistant, Michael, entered the room with the day's schedule. "You have a meeting with the investors in half an hour," Michael informed, noticing his boss's distraction. "Is everything all right?" Robert adjusted his tie, restless. "I need you to find out some information about an employee at the Golden Palace." "The waitress from last night?" Michael asked cautiously. "Yes, I want to know everything about her." Meanwhile, Sarah started her day at her first job, at Mr. Joe's bakery. From 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. she served breakfast to hurried customers in downtown. It was a less glamorous job than at the Golden Palace, but it paid for Emily's school supplies. During her break, sitting in the back of the bakery, she observed the scar on her wrist, a permanent reminder of the motorcycle accident with Robert 15 years ago. Back then, they were just two young people in love, full of dreams. She was 20, a culinary student, and he was 22, freshly graduated in business administration, starting to work in his father's company. The bakery bell rang, bringing Sarah back to the present. Her friend Jennifer, a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital, rushed in. "Sarah, you won't believe it. That businessman, Robert Taylor, was at the hospital this morning." Sarah felt her heart tighten. What was he doing there? He visited the oncology ward. It seems his sister is hospitalized. And you know what else? He asked about you. What? Do you mean? He found out that you're a regular blood donor. Helen from reception mentioned that you help many patients with your donations. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering how she started donating blood regularly after the accident that resulted in her scar. It was her way of giving back the help she received when she needed it. In the penthouse of the business building, Robert received Michael's report about Sarah. She works in 3 different places: at the bakery in the morning, does catering freelance in the afternoon, and at the Golden Palace at night. She has an 8-year-old daughter, lives with her mother in a small apartment in Queens, and Michael hesitated. And she started donating blood regularly 15 years ago after a motorcycle accident. Robert felt the world spin. Memories started coming back like flashes. The accident, the hospital, the promises made. The guilt he had carried for so many years returned with full force. That afternoon, he went to visit his sister Claire in the hospital. She was more debilitated, fighting against an aggressive cancer that was consuming not only her health, but also the family's resources. "You seem troubled," observed Claire, always perceptive despite her illness. "I met someone from the past," Robert confessed, sitting next to his sister. "Someone I hurt deeply." Claire held her brother's hand. "The waitress from the Golden Palace? I've heard about her. The nurses comment about her regular blood donations. They say she started after an accident." Robert couldn't continue the conversation. He left the room disturbed, his certainties crumbling like a sandcastle. In the hospital corridor, he leaned against the wall, remembering the last conversation with his father 15 years ago. "You have to choose, Robert. Either this girl or your inheritance. I won't allow my only son to throw his future away because of a teenage romance." He had chosen the inheritance, the family empire, success. He left without explanations, leaving behind not only Sarah but also his own humanity. Now, years later, fate put them face to face again, and he discovered that his choices had much deeper consequences than he imagined. The next morning, Sarah was taking Emily to school when a black BMW stopped beside her. The window lowered, revealing Robert's face. "Can we talk?" he asked, his tone quite different from the arrogance displayed at the restaurant. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand. "I'm busy. Please, Sarah, I know it's you." The sound of her name in his voice made her heart skip a beat. Emily looked curiously at the man in the car. "Mom, who is he?" "No one important, sweetie. Come on, you'll be late." Robert watched the two walk away, noticing for the first time how the girl had his eyes. The discovery hit him like lightning. The girl's age, the dates, everything fit perfectly. At the office, he could barely concentrate. His sister, Claire's words echoed in his mind. "You've changed so much. What happened to that boy who always helped others?" During the afternoon, Sarah was working at a corporate event catering when Robert appeared again. He had discovered her schedule through Michael. "We need to talk about Emily," he said, approaching the place where she was organizing the canapes. Sarah froze. "How do you know her name?" "I did my research. Sarah, is she—" "No," she interrupted him. "You don't have that right. Not after 15 years. I had my reasons." "Reasons?" Sarah laughed without humor. "You simply disappeared. Without a word. Without an explanation. Do you know what it's like to discover you're pregnant and have no way to contact the child's father? Robert ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah remembered so well. My father forced me. He said he would disinherit me if I continued with you. I was young, ambitious, and a coward, Sarah completed. You chose money over love. The truth of those words hit him hard. At that moment, Claire called his cell phone. Her condition had worsened, and she needed another transfusion. I have to go, he said. My sister. I know about Claire, Sarah interrupted. The nurses comment about her when I go to donate blood. Robert looked at her surprised. You still donate blood regularly? I started after our accident. It was my way of being thankful for surviving. Now it's my way of helping people like your sister. At the hospital, while Claire received the transfusion, Robert remained by her side, thoughtful. His sister noticed his restlessness. What's troubling you so much? I have a daughter, Claire. An 8-year-old daughter I didn't know because I was too cowardly to stand up to our father. Claire held her brother's hand. Then it's time to fix that. Don't make the same mistake twice. Robert left the hospital determined. He went to the bakery, where Sarah worked in the morning. He waited patiently until she came out, ignoring dozens of calls from his team about important meetings. Why are you doing this? Sarah asked when she saw him. Because I want to fix my mistakes. I want to meet my daughter. He hesitated. I want to try to recover what I lost. Sarah observed him for a long moment. It's not that simple. Emily has her own life, her own routines. You can't just show up and expect everything to magically resolve itself. I know, but I want to try. Please, give me a chance to be part of her life, of your lives. The New York autumn arrived with its cold mornings and warm afternoons. Sarah watched Emily playing in the park while thinking about Robert's proposal. In recent weeks, he had shown himself to be persistent, appearing in the places where she worked, always respectful but determined. She has your eyes, said Sarah, finally breaking the silence. Robert was sitting next to her on the park bench, a meeting she had finally accepted after much insistence. And your smile, he replied, watching Emily on the seesaw with other children. How did you manage, Sarah? Raising her alone all these years, one day at a time. 3 jobs, help from my mother, a lot of sacrifice, but each of her smiles makes all the effort worth it. Robert felt the weight of guilt increase. I could have helped. I should have been present. Yes, you should have. But there's no use lamenting now. What matters is what you intend to do from here on out. In Robert's office, things were starting to change. His employees noticed a difference in his behavior. The always demanding boss remained competent, but something in his posture had softened. Michael, his assistant, was the first to notice when Robert cancelled an important meeting to attend Emily's school presentation. Are you sure you want to postpone the meeting with the Chinese investors? Asked Michael, concerned. Some things are more important than business, Michael, Robert replied, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. My daughter is going to perform a musical number at school. I'm not going to miss that. At the presentation, Robert sat discreetly at the back of the auditorium. Sarah was in the front row, filming everything with her old cell phone. Emily, dressed as a butterfly, sang with other children. Her eyes sparkled under the stage lights, and Robert felt something inside him transform. After the presentation, Emily ran to her mother, excited. Mom, did you see? I didn't miss any part. It was then that she noticed Robert. You're the man from the black car, she said, curious. Robert knelt down to be at her height. Yes, that's me. You sang very well. Thank you, Emily replied, smiling. Are you friends with my mom? Sarah and Robert exchanged a tense look. It's complicated, sweetie, Sarah answered. That night, after putting Emily to bed, Sarah found Robert waiting at the building's entrance. We need to tell her, he said. She deserves to know the truth. It's not that simple. Emily is sensitive, intelligent. I can't just say that her father decided to show up after 8 years. Then help me do it the right way. I want to be part of her life, Sarah. And he hesitated. Yours too, if you'll allow it. Sarah felt. Her heart race, but years of disappointment made her cautious. Let's resolve the situation with Emily first. Then we'll think about the rest. In the days that followed, Robert began to gradually approach Emily. first through casual encounters in the park, then helping with math homework, a subject Emily struggled with. Sarah observed everything with a mixture of apprehension and hope. Claire, from the hospital, also participated in this rapprochement in her own way. Even debilitated, she made a point of listening to the stories Robert told about the niece he had just discovered. "You're different, little brother," Claire said during one of his visits. "Your eyes have a new sparkle. She's amazing, Claire. Smart, sweet, talented. Sarah did an incredible job raising her." Emily was restless that Sunday morning. Sarah noticed that her daughter was playing distractedly with her cereal, something unusual for a child, normally so excited at breakfast. "What's wrong, my love?" asked Sarah, sitting next to her daughter. "Why does Robert come here so often?" Emily asked, surprising her mother. "My friends at school say he's an important businessman, that he appears on television. Why does he want to help with my homework?" Sarah took a deep breath. The moment she had feared so much had arrived. In recent weeks, Robert had become a constant presence in their lives. He helped Emily with school tasks, took them for walks in the park, and even started participating in parent-teacher meetings at school. "Sweetie, there's something important we need to talk about," Sarah began, carefully choosing her words. "Remember when you asked about your father?" Emily nodded. Over the years, she had asked this question a few times, and Sarah always answered that he was far away, that she would explain better one day. "Robert is your father, Emily." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily looked at her cereal bowl, then at her mother, her big eyes full of confusion and questions. Why wasn't he here before? The simple and direct question hit Sarah like an arrow. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Robert, who had arranged to take Emily to the zoo that Sunday. When he entered, he immediately realized that something was different. Emily stared at him with a new intensity, as if seeing him for the first time. "Is it true that you're my dad?" she asked, without beating around the bush. Robert sat down next to her, his heart beating fast. "Yes, Emily, I'm your father." "Why did you never come to see me before?" Robert looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly, encouraging him to be honest. "I made a very big mistake, Emily. When I was younger, I made wrong choices that kept me away from you and your mother, but now I'm trying to fix that if you'll give me a chance." Emily was silent for a long moment, processing the information. "Are you going to disappear again?" "No, never again," Robert answered, his voice choked. "If you accept me, I want to be part of your life forever." Sarah watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Emily stood up, and to the surprise of both, hugged Robert. "I always wanted to have a dad," she whispered. That afternoon, the trip to the zoo gained special meaning. Emily asked Robert thousands of questions, wanting to know everything about him. Sarah accompanied them a bit distant, giving father and daughter space to get to know each other better. At the end of the day, as they were returning home, Emily was sleeping in the back seat of the car. Robert drove in silence, occasionally looking in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughter. "She's amazing," he said softly. "You did an incredible job, Sarah. I did what any mother would do. No, you did much more. You raised an extraordinary person alone while I—" He didn't complete the sentence. "The important thing is that you're here now," Sarah replied, surprising herself with the words of comfort. At the apartment, while Robert carried the sleeping, Emily to bed, Mrs. Betty, Sarah's mother, observed the scene with a mixture of concern and hope. "Are you sure about this, honey?" she asked when Robert left the room. "No," Sarah answered honestly, "but Emily deserves to have a father." Winter arrived, bringing significant changes in everyone's lives. Robert completely reorganized his schedule to dedicate more time to his daughter. His mornings, previously filled with endless meetings, now began with taking Emily to school whenever possible. The relentless businessman was giving way to the dedicated father trying to make up for lost time. At the Golden Palace, Sarah noticed the change in customers' behavior towards her. Rumors about her connection to Robert Taylor ran through the elegant corridors of the restaurant. Some treated her with exaggerated deference, others with poorly disguised curiosity. "You should accept his proposal," Jennifer said during one of her breaks at the bakery. "Robert wants you to stop working so much." Sarah dried her hands on her apron. I don't want his money, Jen. I never did. It's not about money, Sarah. It's about you having time to realize your dreams. Remember, your project of opening a bistro. The bistro dream. Sarah had tucked that desire away in a locked drawer of her heart, along with other hopes from the past. But now, with the recent changes in her life, that drawer was beginning to open timidly. At the company, Robert faced his own challenges. His father, William Taylor, returned from a long trip and was not satisfied with the changes in his son's behavior. "You're putting important matters aside," William criticized in his office. "This family story can wait. We have urgent business to resolve." Robert adjusted his tie, a gesture that now resembled nervousness more than arrogance. "Emily is my daughter. I won't make the same mistake twice." "Mistake?" William laughed humorlessly. "Turning you into the man you are today was a mistake? All this empire we built was a mistake?" "No, Dad. The mistake was abandoning the people I loved for fear of disappointing you." At the hospital, Claire continued her fight. The chemotherapy sessions left her increasingly debilitated, but her spirit remained strong. Emily had started visiting her regularly, bringing drawings and stories that brightened her aunt's difficult days. "You know what I like most about you?" Claire said to Emily during a visit. "Your smile, it's just like your mother's." Emily smiled, confirming the observation. "Mom smiles more now," the girl commented innocently. "I think it's because of Dad." Claire looked meaningfully at Robert, who was leaning against the doorframe. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what really matters." That night, Robert went to the Golden Palace. He waited for Sarah to finish her shift and invited her for coffee. "I need to tell you something," he said when they sat down in a nearby cafe. "I resigned from the company presidency." Sarah almost choked on her coffee. "What? Why?" "Because I realized I can't be the father Emily deserves and the executive my father wants at the same time. I chose our daughter this time." "And what are you going to do?" "I opened my own consulting firm. Smaller, more flexible. I'll earn less, but I'll have time for what really matters." Sarah observed the man in front of her, so different from the arrogant businessman who had spilled wine on his shirt months ago. The small bistro was exactly as Sarah had always dreamed. Walls in soft tones, rustic wooden tables, and an open kitchen where customers could watch the preparation of dishes. Robert had insisted on being a minority partner, but made it clear that the management would be entirely hers. "It's your dream, your vision," he said, watching Sarah supervise the renovation of the place. "I just want to help make it a reality." The news of Robert's resignation from the presidency of the Taylor Group caused a stir in the financial market. William Taylor called an emergency board meeting. "Have you gone mad?" he questioned, throwing newspapers on the table. "Years of work thrown away because of sentimentality?" "It's called family, Dad," Robert replied. "Something you never fully understood. Emily was adapting well to the changes in her life. Having a present father was a novelty that she savored with childish joy. Her grades at school improved, especially in math, a subject she studied with Robert on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Claire observed everything from the hospital, where her treatment showed the first signs of positive response. "You know what makes me happiest?" she said to Sarah during a visit. "Seeing my brother finally at peace with himself." The bistro began to take shape. Sarah reduced her hours at the Golden Palace and the bakery to dedicate herself to the new project. Her recipes, perfected over the years, would be the heart of the menu. "Mom, can I help in the kitchen when it opens?" Emily asked, while watching her mother test new recipes at home. "Of course you can, my love. It's going to be our family business." The word family gained a new meaning for everyone. Robert started having dinner regularly with Sarah, Emily, and Mrs. Betty. The simple meals in the small apartment kitchen had more flavor than the refined dinners he was used to. One afternoon, while helping Emily with homework, Robert received an important call. His father had suffered a sudden illness and was in the hospital. Despite recent disagreements, Robert rushed there. William, even weakened, maintained his authoritarian posture. "I came to make one last request," he said, his voice weaker than normal. "Dad, don't talk like that. Let me finish. I want to meet my granddaughter before it's too late." The visit to the hospital was initially tense. Emily, always sensitive, perceived her grandfather's fragility behind the severe facade. She approached the bed and, to everyone's surprise, took William's hand. "Do you want to hear the song I learned?" "On the piano?" she asked innocently. The old businessman's eyes watered. "You play the piano?" "Daddy is teaching me. He said he learned from you." The aroma of freshly baked bread and fresh coffee filled the air of the bistro on the morning of the inauguration. Sarah adjusted the final details, her heart beating, fast with a mixture of anxiety and fulfillment. The tables were elegantly set, each detail thoughtfully planned. Emily ran from one side to the other, wearing a small, personalized apron that Robert had specially made for her. At the kitchen door, Mrs. Betty supervised the employees, sharing the knowledge acquired in years of working in restaurants. "Everything is perfect," said Robert, entering the bistro with a large flower arrangement, "exactly as you always dreamed." Emily's Bistro, the name chosen by Sarah in honor of her daughter, opened its doors promptly at 9 a.m. The first customers were familiar faces, old patrons from the bakery, colleagues from the Golden Palace, friends who had followed Sarah's journey. Claire, still recovering but already stronger, made a point of being present. Seated at a special table with William, the two observed the movement with pride. The old businessman, transformed by illness and interaction with his granddaughter, was beginning to see life from a new perspective. "She has your talent for business," William commented, watching Sarah skillfully manage the kitchen and dining room. "And Emily, she's extraordinary." "Like her mother," Robert completed, passing by with a tray of freshly baked croissants. The morning passed busily with the bistro full. Sarah's dishes, which blended French technique with American ingredients, were a hit. Emily helped by serving water and greeting customers with her captivating smile. During a break, Sarah found Robert in the small back area where they kept supplies. "Thank you," she said for the first time without reservations. "Not just for the investment, but for believing in me." "I'm the one who should thank you, Sarah. You gave me a second chance that I didn't deserve." The look between them lasted longer than normal. Years of hurt and resentment were beginning to give way to something new, something neither of them expected to feel again. Back in the dining room, Emily was playing a song on the small piano that Robert had installed in the corner of the bistro. William, sitting next to her, guided her hands over the keys with a patience no one would have imagined he possessed. "Grandpa, this song is sad," Emily commented. "It's Chopin, darling. Sometimes sadness can be beautiful too." Claire observed the scene with tears in her eyes. Her treatment was responding well, and for the first time in a long time she allowed herself to make plans for the future. A future that included seeing her niece grow up, her brother happy, her family reunited. At the end of the day, after the last customer left, the family gathered for a small private celebration. Sarah served her specialty, ratatouille with an American twist, a recipe she developed thinking of uniting her roots with her dreams. The success of Emily's Bistro surpassed all expectations. In just 3 months, the small establishment was already known as one of the most charming culinary spots in the city. Sarah masterfully balanced the management of the place and caring for her daughter. Now aided by a dedicated team, she had trained herself. Robert reorganized his consultancy to operate in an office on the floor above the bistro, allowing him to always be nearby. His mornings invariably began with a coffee prepared by Sarah while he watched Emily do her homework before school. "You've changed so much," Claire commented during a lunch at the bistro. Her recovery was progressing well, and she could now leave the hospital more frequently. "We've all changed," Robert replied, observing Sarah through the kitchen window. Some feelings, however, remained the same. The relationship between Sarah and Robert evolved slowly, like a recipe that needs the right time to reach the perfect point. Family dinners became more frequent, and conversations extended late into the night after Emily went to sleep. One night, while closing the bistro, Robert found Sarah in the kitchen, organizing the recipes for the next day. "Remember the first time you cooked for me?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Sarah smiled, remembering the burnt pasta she had prepared when they were young. "You ate it all and said it was delicious," and it was, because it was made with love. The silence that followed was full of meaning. Sarah felt her heart race. When Robert approached, "I never stopped loving you," he confessed, his voice low but firm. "Even in the years we spent apart, even when I tried to convince myself otherwise." Sarah closed her eyes, letting the words sink into her heart. "I never stopped loving you either," she finally admitted. "But I was so afraid of getting hurt again." Robert touched her face gently. "I won't make the same mistakes. I promise." The kiss that followed was like coming home after a long journey, familiar and new at the same time, full of promises and possibilities. Emily, who had come down to fetch her forgotten notebook, witnessed the scene and smiled. Silently, she went back upstairs, where Mrs. Betty was waiting for her. "Grandma, I think Mum and Dad are really going to be together now." Mrs. Betty hugged her granddaughter. "Sometimes love needs time to mature, sweetheart, like the sweetest fruits." A year passed since the inauguration of Emily's Bistro. The small establishment had become a family meeting point where stories and flavors mixed daily. Sarah expanded, the menu including dishes that told her family's story, including the burnt pasta, now a house specialty, purposely prepared al dente with a smoked sauce. Claire, fully recovered, took over the presidency of the Taylor Group. William, although still participating in important decisions, dedicated more time to his grandchildren. Emily had gained 2 cousins in recent months, children of company, executives her grandfather had helped train. On a special afternoon, the bistro closed earlier for a private celebration. The tables were reorganized, forming one large table in the center of the room. Fresh flowers decorated the environment, and the aroma of spices filled the air. "Is everything ready?" Robert asked, nervously adjusting his tie. Emily, wearing a light blue dress chosen especially for the occasion, smiled at her father. "Mom is still getting ready upstairs. Grandma said brides always run late." The bistro had been chosen for the wedding ceremony because it symbolized everything Sarah and Robert had built together, a space of love, family, and new beginnings. The guests, only family and close friends, began to arrive. William, seated at the piano with Emily, tried to distract his anxious granddaughter with another music lesson. "Remember what I told you about Chopin?" he asked. "That sometimes sadness can be beautiful," Emily replied. "But today isn't a day for sad music, Grandpa." Claire, stunning in her navy blue dress, approached the two. "How about we play together that happy song we rehearsed?" When Sarah finally came down the stairs, the entire bistro fell silent. Her simple but elegant dress enhanced her natural beauty. Robert, upon seeing her, felt the same butterflies in his stomach that he had experienced for the first time 15 years ago. The ceremony was conducted by Jennifer, who had become an inseparable friend of the family. Between tears and smiles, Sarah and Robert exchanged vows that spoke not only of love but of forgiveness, growth, and gratitude. "True love," Sarah said in her vows, "is like a perfect recipe. It needs the right ingredients, the right time, and sometimes it needs to go wrong a few times before getting it right. And I promise," Robert responded, "to spend the rest of my life being the right ingredient in your recipe for happiness." Emily, at the moment of the rings, surprised everyone with a speech she had secretly prepared. "When I was little, I always asked for a complete family as a Christmas gift. Now I understand that it was always complete. It just needed time for everyone to find each other again." The dinner that followed was personally prepared by Sarah, with the help of her team. Each dish told a part of her story with Robert, from the burnt pasta to the chocolate soufflé she had perfected during the years they were separated. At the end of the night, as the last guests said goodbye, Sarah and Robert danced slowly in the center of the bistro. Emily slept in her grandmother's lap, exhausted but happy. "You know what I love most about you," Robert whispered. "What?" "Your ability to transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary. That's what you did with the bistro, with our daughter, with our story." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. "And this is just the beginning of our recipe."